All right, well, welcome guys. This is Cardinal Talks, and this is our fourth one of the semester, and it's just kind of a way for our students to get information from experts in their field and people around campus that they can take advice from. Brian, want to introduce Elyse?
I will do that. Thank you, Mandy. First of all, for those of you who I have not met, my name is Brian Craner. I'm the Associate Dean for Student Life and Leadership Programs here at SVSU. First of all, thank you for coming out on a Friday morning to Cardinal Talks. We're pretty pumped about the response we've gotten from Cardinal Talks so far this year. I want to start by doing kind of a informal survey so I get a sense of who's here. So when I say something, if this is true of you, please raise your hand. First year student. Almost everybody? Good. All right. All right. Do we have any RAs?
RAs
aren't really good at listening. They don't really understand things. First year student.
You just said that.
Did I?
No.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just checking to see if you're all still first year students. Residential student. Who lives on campus? Who, I have a whole bunch of these things made up. International students. Yes. Member of National Society of Leadership and Success.
Woo!
Very good. Member of the Living Leadership Program.
Wow.
Good. Please raise your hand if you left class early to be here today.
Awesome.
All right, these are the people you look down on.
Shame on you.
She's just like, I didn't go. I skipped it entirely. Not good academic behaviors. That's enough questions. My role here this morning is to introduce the speaker. No idea what she's talking about, but it'll be good. But I have had the pleasure of knowing Elyse for a number of years now. I don't even know how many. But she was first one of my peer advisors. In one of my former roles, I was in charge of first year programs and was fortunate enough to make a very good decision in hiring Elyse as one of the first ever peer advisors over in that office. Excelled in that role. I think a little bit of what she's going to talk about today is going to allude back to her experiences there. And then from that, had the opportunity to coerce her into being one of the first ever members of Forever Red. And she was instrumental in getting that organization off the ground and running here, a pretty recognizable organization on campus now, although we are only going into our fourth year. And now works here as the resident director in Living Center North. So honestly, when I say I've had the pleasure, I do mean that, and I'm not saying because she's sitting next to me, of watching Elyse as a, were you a sophomore?
I think I was halfway through my third year.
Okay, so a third year student truly grow as a student leader and in a number of different roles, and now as a professional and a colleague and a friend. So my pleasure to introduce her to you, and I hope that you take advantage of the words that she's going to share with you today. Elyse,
Cool.
the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hi. I would like to say when Brian said he coerced me into Forever Red, he really did. He made me come along to take notes, and then I couldn't keep my mouth shut, so I was just like thrown right into it. But that's one way to go about it. So anyways, I'm going to talk today about networking and making connections. So obviously a lot of you are first year students, some second years and above, and we're just going to kind of realize how connections that you make now can really help you on later on in life. So I have a few different comparisons to give you throughout today. And the first one is that networking is like diffusing a bomb, because you never know which connection will save the day. So you always have to be ready, right? When you're thinking about meeting other people, and you never know who is going to be a connection that can really help you on later in life, right? So it's about meeting as many people as you can and making sure that those connections are good ones. So this kind of starts, you always have to be presentable, right? Still looking nice. You never know who you're going to run into at any given point in the day. And make sure that you realize that people are always watching and listening, right? Like the RAs have heard it all the time. You live in a fishbowl, right? So everything you do is kind of noticed and watched by others. Whether, I mean, SVSU's campus is pretty small, so whether it's people in the hall or me or administrators or Brian in student life, pretty much everyone you meet is going to recognize you or just to take notice of your actions. And so that's one of those things to be aware of, and kind of just always being ready. I get coffee from dining services almost every morning. And one of the mornings I was in there, and a man in a chef suit showed up. And I was just like, hi, my name's Elyse. And I introduced myself. I had no idea, but it ended up being his first day. And we made a pretty good connection there. And I was like, hi, my name's Elyse. I don't actually work here. I'm just getting coffee. But it's just one of those things where just being friendly, opening yourself up to meeting other people can be really beneficial. I say it's beneficial because now he makes sure there's spinach in the salad bar every day, which is really special to me. It's very crucial to my diet. But anyways, the next one is that networking is like building a bridge, okay? It can take you to new places and it can get you across rough waters. So like building a bridge, it takes time and effort, and you have to build a really good foundation. Okay, so not only is the first interaction pretty important, but building that foundation, talking to other people, learning the importance of building those connections is really important. So being relational is a key to networking. So similarity breeds trust, right? Has everyone heard that before? Okay, so the more similarities you have with someone, usually it's easier to trust them, you get along better, and you can just find out things about each other that you didn't know. So we'll spend some time at the end of this. I'm going to go through this and we'll open up and have some interaction, hopefully. But learning how to introduce yourself in a good manner and making sure that when you do, you share your major, your hometown, your interests, anything that could spark an interest in someone else. We had another member of Forever Ed who was at a networking event, and she ended up, just because she was from the same town as someone, she ended up getting an internship just based off of like, oh, that's where you're from, that's where I'm from, and just the conversation spread from there. And so realizing that can be a pretty important connection to start is pretty awesome. So be open, okay? Be open, because like I said, similarity breeds trust. The third one is that networking is like farming. Sometimes it stinks, but it's worth the results. So again, takes more time and effort. You have to be patient, but cultivating relationships is really important, both professionally and personally. So getting to know people on a personal level and a professional level can really help you out in the future. And you need to fertilize your seeds in the farming sense. Sorry. Yes, not a biological sense. We're talking farming and networking here, so just keep that in mind. So not only do you have to cultivate the relationships that you build, but send follow-up emails, okay? So that first interaction doesn't mean anything unless you follow up, okay? So unless you take the time to invest in relationships and to move forward with that, that can be really critical. If someone gives you their business card, which you should be asking for, use it. I've been in a lot of situations where I've met someone and we had like a decent conversation. It was just either at a dinner or on a trip somewhere, and later on I sent them an email that said, hi, this is Elyse. I just met you and I want to let you know it was really nice talking to you, and I appreciated the time that you spent with me. And just a simple follow-up email like that can get you a pretty good response and really can help build those connections and build the trust that you have with someone. And really make sure that when you're building those connections that you keep up with them. So set up, if they're local, after you send that email, set up a coffee date with them sometime in the future. And that can be really helpful just to keep going with that. Along with this, being professional is a really key aspect as well. Using good language, posting good things on social media. Those of you who live in North who are laughing right now know that if you say the F word in my building, you have to do the 10 push-ups. So it's just kind of recognizing that you never know who's listening, you never know who's around. So being very careful with how you portray yourself in all situations. Okay? The next one is that networking is like Snapchatting in public. And there's a few things that this is relatable with. One, you have to be comfortable with yourself. Some people look absolutely ridiculous when we're doing that, but they do it anyway, so you just have to be aware of that. It can look super awkward, and it's usually worth it. I've been to a lot of events where you're awkwardly standing, waiting to introduce yourself to someone, but they're in the middle of a conversation. So you just kind of have to be comfortable with yourself. You may look silly, but just stand patiently and wait, and your time will come where you can introduce yourself to that. So embracing discomfort is key when you're in, especially a networking setting, when the event is based on networking and you're just like walking up to random people and saying, hi, my name's Elyse, I want to meet you because, or just saying something about yourself. Another reason why it's like Snapchatting in public is because people only see a short clip of you. That first interaction is usually a pretty short clip, but it's the one that they remember, and they can't replay it. Well, they can kind of in Snapchat, but not in real life. So just make sure that you're aware, like I said, it goes back to being presentable, being professional, recognizing that the people that you interact with are going to remember something about you. So that is something to keep in mind. And you never know like who's going to see it or who you're going to get involved with. At the end, we'll talk a little bit more about 30-second elevator clips, and just we'll practice those a little bit if we need to. And this is something where you always have to be ready because you don't know who's watching or who you're going to be introduced to. I was at an event in Detroit, and I saw a man named Mike Finney, who's a CEO of a big company, and he's an SVSU grad, and I knew that, so I wanted to go introduce myself to him. But I didn't realize that the group of people he was standing with, Chris Elyse was with him. I think a lot of you know who he is, and the governor of Michigan was there as well. So that was interesting. I introduced myself to one person and got introduced to a lot more people of a little bit higher caliber. So you always have to be prepared for a lot of different things like that. And my last one, and then we'll go.
Just to give you, not that you need more credibility, but instead of saying I was at this event in Detroit, tell them what it was.
Okay, I was at the Michigan. What was I at?
Economic Summit.
I was at the Michigan Economic Summit.
Okay. No, go ahead.
No, I was at the Michigan Economic Summit. There were only a few students invited to this event. It was in Detroit. I went 2 years ago. It was a pretty tough application process, but I was able to go and learn a lot about networking professionalism. That's where a lot of this stems from, just having that experience and realizing and meeting a lot of people there. So we got to spend a weekend with the governor, a lot of the top business leaders and CEOs across the state of Michigan. And we were able to be fully immersed and involved in brainstorming processes and meetings about the strengths and weaknesses that Michigan has and how we can help solve some of the problems that have arisen. And so we spent a lot of time as students kind of giving our perspective about how higher education plays into this as well. And so it was a pretty cool event, so thank you. But
yeah,
we
got
got
great at name dropping. You should do that better. Chris Elyse, who doesn't know who Chris Elyse is? The name Elyse, how about Marissa? Elyse. Elyse, where do we know Elyse from?
Mike Elyse.
Mike Elyse is the owner of the
CEO of
Little Caesars Pizza, Red Wings, Tigers. Chris Elyse is his son, and the list goes on, by the way, Greektown Casino. He basically owns Detroit. Sound that great, I guess. But his son will one day inherit all of these things. One could argue more powerful in the state of Michigan than the governor himself. So, and then when Elyse said only a few students got to go to this event, she doesn't mean a few students from SVSU. She means only a handful of students from the state of Michigan. And she really was being asked her opinion about how to improve the economic state of the state by the governor. So when she said it was a pretty competitive process to be chosen, that's because the governor wants to hear from the best and brightest students in the state of Michigan. So yeah, but in the framework of networking, I say that because it not only led to her creating this much more expanded network, she wouldn't have been chosen had it not been for a network that she already had. So this all kind of goes, weaves into one another. She was chosen for this not just because of her merit, a standout student, but she had people who knew of her, who were very influential people, not only in this community, but across the state. So that's how she was chosen, and I've been able to witness it, the results of what she was able to bring back. She's not only helped Forever Red, because of some of what she got to experience and the members of Forever Red, but some of the people that she met there, one of them has a number of engineering businesses up in the Alpena area, and she was able to connect an SVSU grad and say, hey, I know this person up in Alpena that's got this thing going, and now he's very gainfully employed up in the Alpena area as an engineer. So she's now used her connections at this conference, at the Economic Summit, to help all some SVSU students and land, again, very, very good jobs in their field. So I digress.
Okay, well, that's why I keep Brian around. He can explain things better than me. But yeah, so it is important, and I'm going to diverge a little bit, and we'll go back to this. I'm almost done with my comparisons. But it is, and like Brian said, it's not just because I was at this event, but I got there because I try to be pretty friendly in general and just introduce myself to people. And so some people tease me in my morning networking routes. I stop in one office to get coffee. I stop in another office to say hi to someone else. I just kind of wander around and just try to build relationships with people. And so another job I had gotten, it was because I had spent some time in career services. I worked at the writing center, so I didn't really need their help going over my resume, but I thought it would be a good idea just to know someone in that area, because obviously when we graduate college, we want to become employed. So I went up there, I let them look over my resume. I didn't let them, I asked them to look over. It's not that great of a resume. So anyways, they worked with me a little bit on that. I just introduced myself. I've been able to know the director of that office for a few years now, and it was another instance where there was, like SVSU will host a lot of grad fairs or like job networking fairs, so please go to those if you haven't started to already. They're just good to get your name out there. But one of the things, they had sent me an email, like it was a science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing. It was like a STEM fair, and I'm communication business minor, but not really involved in all of that. But because of the people that were there, they were talking to the director and they said, yeah, we need engineers and computer science people as well, but do you have anyone who can like write? And so I got an email like right after that conversation happened. Mike Major, the director of career services, he sent me a quick email and was like, hey, if you can, try to stop by this fair. It ends at 4. There's someone who wants to talk to you. Come find me. I got that email, I think, at 3:45, and this is one of those things when I was saying try to look nice usually. I was in like jeans and a t-shirt. It was a Friday. I wasn't really planning on seeing anyone. I was like, oh crap. So I ran over there, introduced myself. I ended up getting hired for that job as well, just because they were like, hey, do you know someone who can do this for you? And they're like, oh yeah, I remember Elyse. She's been in our office, or she's talked to us about different things. So for a couple of years, I worked for this guy writing, which is really funny because I know absolutely nothing about technology, which a lot of you know. But I ended up writing on their website about information technology systems. So it's just another cool connection, just because I'd spent the time to introduce myself to someone, and I checked my email regularly, that I was able to get that job as well, which was pretty cool. So this last comparison, I don't have a Tinder, so I don't know like how accurate I'm being. That's my disclaimer. But networking is and is sometimes not like finding a match on Tinder, okay? So you can't match with everyone, which is probably true for that. And you scroll through until you find something that works best for you. You probably won't get along with everyone all the time, but just making sure that you have your best face forward and you're open to those connections is important. But it's not just a one-time interaction. And I talked about following up with email, following up with a coffee date, following up by stopping in their office, being like, hey, you spoke at something that I was at, or you came into my classroom and talked about this. I just wanted to introduce myself and see if there's anything that I can do to make myself more presentable in general, or something like that. And so you can kind of just build connections off that. When you ask people for help, they love it, and they're obviously like more than willing to do so. So same thing with visiting your professors in their office hours. Just going to their office hours, 1, it shows initiative, which is pretty cool, and not a lot of students do. 2, introducing yourself can be really important, just because they may see you in class and they probably know who you are, but getting that reaffirmation of, hey, my name's Elyse, this is what I do, this is what I'm studying, can really help you with that. It's given me some really good connections just through professors. I did that for my first comm professor, and I ended up working for his parents at a tutoring center off campus for a couple years as well, just because I had spent the time to go to his office hours, talk to him. We ended up having a lot of similarities, a lot of similar interests, and so that helped as well. And he's the head of the communication department, so I'm hoping it will help me in the future when I graduate with my master's and want to teach. So there's just a lot of things that you can build on through that. And I'll kind of move on and recap, and we can go back and discuss some more of these things. But okay, so I don't know where this man got this quote. Maybe he made it up himself. But do any of you know who Arel Moody is? He spoke here this year and last year. He said something that has really stuck with me throughout the past couple of years since I've heard it. Because we've grown up, especially we start college, we go through high school. It's all about who you know. It's all about who you know. Your resume doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. It's all about who you know, which is mostly true. But he was kind of just looked at it and said, that's absolutely false. And it was surprising, but then he followed it up with this. So it doesn't matter who you know, it matters who knows you and who likes you. And I thought that was pretty profound. And I've just kind of thought about that throughout the years too. Like I can say, oh yeah, I know so-and-so, but if they don't know who I am and they don't recognize me, and I've never made the effort to go up and reintroduce myself, which is another thing. Like sometimes it might take you a couple times just to reintroduce yourself. People, especially at different events, especially if they're centered around networking, they will be meeting people all night, right? So it's okay the next time you see them, if you remember their name and you recognize them, go ahead and reintroduce yourself. Be like, hi, my name's Elyse. I saw you the other night at this event. And they'll be like, oh, that's right. And because it's the second time it's happened, they'll put more effort into remembering who you are. And that can be really important too. So keep that in mind too. Don't be offended ever if someone doesn't remember who you are. And it's just something where you kind of have to take the first step and be like, hi, you might not remember me, but my name is, and this is where we met, and this is the conversation that we had. And that goes along with the follow-up emails too, making sure that you remember to follow up with them, meet with them again, and just kind of keep building that connection. It does take a lot of work. Okay, so before I go through and do a quick recap, just as like a side note, a lot of networking professionalism, it kind of has to do with social media as well. So you meet someone, and now the new thing is, even though I keep saying, send them an email, a new thing is to, they'll follow you on Twitter, or they'll add you on some sort of social media networking site. It's not always going to be Facebook anymore, but it's just being careful that what you present on social media, we may think that it's private and that it's just our personal space, but you have to be really careful because you don't know, well, you should know who's following you. You should get that notification. But you have to be just aware that people will follow you, that they will see it. Our president here at SVSU now has a Twitter. Our dean of students now has a Twitter, and they've been following people like crazy. So just be aware. The president may see something. It might not be that they follow you, but if a friend follows you and retweets something, just be careful. You just have to be aware. You just have to know, kind of have an idea of how you're being presented for the public. So just keep that in mind. It's kind of a side note, but I just thought it was something that was kind of relevant to this. So to kind of sum things up, like R.L. Moody said, it doesn't matter who you know. It matters who knows you and who likes you. Like I started out with, networking is like diffusing a bomb, so you never know which connection is going to save the day. So just think about that. And all the people that you're meeting, just kind of going through and making sure that you're making those good connections, that you're being presentable, and that you're being ready to take action. So networking is like building a bridge. It can take you to new places and help you cross rough waters. It can also spend a lot of time and effort building a foundation to make those connections. Usually they pay off. Usually bridges are pretty reliable and pretty sturdy, so it's usually a good thing to invest your time into. Networking is like farming. Sometimes it stinks, but it's worth the effort. You have to fertilize those relationships that you make. Like I said, the follow-ups, the continued introductions, things like that. Eventually, they'll know who you are, they'll recognize you, and they'll put your name to something. If they hear of an opportunity, they'll be like, oh, that's right. Alex has been talking to me about wanting to do this in the future, and I just met someone who's in charge of a position that just opened. So what is he going to do? He's going to talk to Alex and say, hey, I have a position that's open. You should apply for this. And that's how a lot of jobs get taken. Networking is like Snapchatting in public. You have to be comfortable with yourself, but also realize that people are only going to see a small segment of your life, so you have to make sure that it's a pretty good one. And networking is like finding a match on Tinder. You have to swipe through till you find the right one. But just remember that it's not a one-time interaction. Well, that concludes